Welcome back to Holding It Together Kinda podcast. I'm your host, Michael Macniak, and today we're going to talk about the elephant in the room that usually lives in a folder at the back of your filing cabinet, or more likely than that, in that quiet, nagging corner of your mind that keeps you awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. We got to talk about special needs planning, folks. Now, if you just felt your chest tighten up a little bit, you're not alone. Mine did too, a little. For most of us, planning usually means deciding what's for dinner or where we're going to go on vacation. But when you're a caregiver, planning is a different beast altogether. It's a complex, emotional, and frankly, intimidating puzzle of legal terms, financial acronyms, and often the hardest part is confronting a future where we aren't there to be the primary holder or togetherer, right? We worry about big stuff. What'll happen to him or her when I or we are gone? Where will they live? Who will make sure that they have their favorite snacks? Will they be safe? But here's the thing. We can't predict the future, but we can certainly protect it. Today, we aren't here to drown you in legalese. We're here to take that giant mountain of what ifs and break it down into a series of kind of like manageable chunks, if you will, bite-sized chunks. We're going to talk about how to build a safety net that catches your loved one without catching you up in this whole web of anxiety and stress that keeps you up in the morning. So if you got $50 or 50,000 or 500,000 to leave behind, and whether you have a kid that's 15 or a kid that's 50, you need this conversation. It's about dignity. It's about peace of mind. It's about making sure the life you've built for your family stays built. All right, so take a deep breath, everybody. We're going to figure this out together. Hey, everybody. It's Mike Macniak back here again with you. And I really want to emphasize today that this idea of planning for the future for a loved one, planning for a loved one's special needs, it is absolutely one of the most profound acts of love a family can undertake. It means you're being introspective. It means you're being communicative. It means that you are giving forethought to not only the family need now, the family need in the future, but also those around the family who may be forced to come in to help or may not, who knows, So one of the things that we need to balance when we're talking about special needs planning is the technicality of it, the must-dos versus the emotional side of it, which is the how-tos. I'm very much an emotional how-to kind of guy. I'm very much a practical side of things as opposed to technical. So that's why I love the fact that my good friend Rebecca Iantoni is back here with me today. If you guys remember from our very first emergency broadcast, Beck was here. She's been a friend of mine for 40 plus years, and our careers have. She's got the career that I always thought I wanted.
So funny.
Yeah, she's really an inspiration to me, and she helps so many people in this world of specialized needs and family help. And she works a lot with mental illness, and particularly obviously within the court system because she is an attorney extraordinaire. Hello, Rebecca, and welcome back.
Thanks, Michael. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm excited to talk to you about special needs planning because I don't do a lot of it. I never did do a lot of it because frankly, it's overwhelming to me. It's overwhelming and intimidating. So if it's overwhelming and intimidating to somebody like me who's been doing this for 30 years, I can only imagine some of the people that you run into who are trying to broach this subject for the first time. And granted, we're talking, there is a socioeconomic factor to this, but let's strip away the socioeconomic factor and say, specialized, I will say at the outset, special needs planning should not be preserved or reserved for the rich and famous. Special needs planning is something that we all need to undertake. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And mostly because, during when we're raising, so we talk about it from kind of two populations of people: folks with the cognitive impairment, the intellectual disability, and then the folks that have the mental health impairment or the mental health issues that kind of impede on their ability to provide for themselves in a way that doesn't cause parents to be concerned about their future. And so a lot of the times, or most often, we are able to access public assistance benefits, Medicaid, SSI, some kind of social security benefit, food stamps, or whatever public assistance, Section 8 housing, whatever these public benefits are out there, you access them and you create this sort of house of cards, like this perfect house of cards of access to services and benefits and health insurance and all these things. And so the goal here is when we as parents or family members create this house of cards for that loved one or a family friend or whomever, what we don't want to have happen is to have a windfall of money come through and just wipe out those cards after we're gone, and then have a whole new world of hurt essentially to sort out. And so
Okay, so let me break that down and put that into a very common question that I have,
yeah,
and I do in my practice, because my practice is really working with holy cow, the here and now, how we got to react to things that are
yep,
going on now. And so special needs planning is something that I do engage in these conversations and understand exactly what you're saying.
yep,
Because there are, yeah, we want to create this perfect ivory tower, but all of a sudden money comes in and holy crap, now the ivory tower is gone and the
yeah,
stairs leading into it. And this issue comes up a lot. And this is a tough one, but we'll get it out of the way right away. I wrote it down as you were speaking. Families of means, thankfully, can afford private insurance. Okay, let's talk
mhm,
about health insurance. I will say this, that when we are talking about especially folks with mental illness and what their needs are, private insurance is wonderful because it's there and it's covers a lot. But I would say that the resources that private insurance is willing to offer are limited.
mhm,
However, on the state side, the government side of insurance, there's a lot of resources out there. Now we could talk all day about the log jams and how hard they are to get into them, but they are
right,
there. But the harder part is to get those the insurance to begin with. So it's hard to get
yep,
state insurance, but there's a lot of resources. It's easy to get private insurance. Well, easy, quote unquote, easy. Um, and what they'll pay for is somewhat limited.
right.
So at sometimes we find ourselves faced with the dilemma, and this goes to what you're getting at with our house of cards or our ivory tower. Sometimes does it make sense to forego private insurance and take state offered insurance or even Medicaid?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the mental health space as well, I mean, so one thing to understand is Medicaid, we talked about this in our prior podcast, like Medicaid is federally funded and state administered, meaning that the states get to take this amount of money from the feds and decide what programs it's going to fund. And a lot of times those programs that it funds are waiver type programs. And so like the mental health waiver, the developmental disability waiver, the acquired brain injury waiver. So there's these
Yeah, you
waiver
know what
programs.
though? Let me stop you.
Yeah.
Explain what that waiver concept means because people don't necessarily know.
Yeah. So the waiver is a program that provides it targets a certain group of people for whatever, like the DDS waiver, the Department of Developmental Disabilities waiver, targets folks with an IQ lower than 70. So people with an IQ lower than 70 can qualify for these services. And there's like rules and requirements.
Acquired brain injury, traumatic
Yep.
brain injury
You have
waiver
a
is a
brain
good one.
injury, and it's not that you were born with a birth defect. It's that something happened, you acquired it during life. Mental health is in this, I always mess up. It's like a pervasive, what's the standard for mental health? The pervasive, ongoing.
Severe and persistent. Is that the word
Yes,
you're
that's
looking
it.
for?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
I always get those terms.
severe
So
and persistent.
So you have to, in order to access these services through these waiver programs, you have to have that foundation of Medicaid eligibility. And so to get Medicaid eligibility, and a lot of the times people of means will say, no, we'll just wash the problem in money. And the thing is that you can't always buy the services that the waiver provides. The waiver provides a tremendous amount of support and is really targeted to wrap around the individual and give them the support based on those very needs that somebody with a mental health issue has, or somebody with a cognitive impairment would have. So accessing those services is often like vitally important, because there's just no way to buy those types of services going forward. Now, whether there's going to be some systemic change at some point down the road, I mean, there's never been any really good talk about that, because it's a problem that's really hard to solve for. So accessing and being eligible for public assistance benefits opens you up to, so when you're Medicaid eligible, it opens you up to that house of cards, which is often the way people think about how somebody is going to survive. Because the one thing, I'm a special needs mom, my youngest is cognitively impaired. He is autistic, a host of medical issues. And, the biggest concern I have is what happens to him when I'm gone, and that is a common concern. That is a huge concern. And when you have somebody with mental health issues, a child with mental health issues, the other concern, another element that comes into that is, oh my gosh, who's going to, for lack of a better word, put up with this or manage this or love him or her the way I do and just keep pushing through and helping and stuff. So that infrastructure, that public assistance infrastructure, is what gives us as parents a lot of peace of mind in terms of how they will survive when we're gone and we're no longer micromanaging.
The theory being that these infrastructures that you're describing will be there after we're gone.
Right. That's the theory. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and we hope that they will be, and history has shown that they pretty much have been, which is good. And folks, they call them a waiver because, as Rebecca was saying, when you get eligible for Medicaid, you're found eligible because you meet certain criteria in terms of your finances, your income, and how much money you have to spend on your own care. Well, this waiver and these waivers that we're talking about have the ability to blow that number out of the water by millions of dollars in some cases, and say, yeah, you're still going to be eligible for Medicaid, even though your care is going to cost $3-4 million, and we're going to take it from this waiver. So technically, you're getting this money, but
Right.
we're waiving that as income to you, and you are now going to be able to receive these resources. So to Becca's point, when you can get onto these waivers, they are structured in such a way that the resources that they offer are only offered through that waiver. So folks,
Right.
money can't buy you love. Very often you can't pay for some of these services.
Right.
I suppose in the world of big time dollars that people can afford to bring in specialists for a whole bunch of stuff, but that gets really far afield. So my very was going to be, when you sit down with folks, what is the very first thing that they raise as their question? What's their number one concern? And you nailed it. It's
Yeah.
I agree with you that's what mine too is like. We want to make sure that somebody's there. This is when people are asking me to stay on, let's say, as a trustee or guardian well into the
Yeah.
future. You know us, you know our family, you know how this
Yep.
whole situation operates. So I understand that, and I also love the fact that you touched on the fact that you really hope that people that are working with your loved one um, understand that over the course of time, and they stay consistent, and they understand what your family values are, what your
Yeah.
dreams for your loved one would be. More importantly, maybe what his or her dreams would be moving forward
Huge.
after you're
Yeah.
gone,
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but how do we listen, things we're talking about right now may already be causing this analysis paralysis, right? How do you, in your meetings with families,
Mhm.
how do you get people past that? How do you get them off the snide and say, come on, you gotta, I don't know, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and I'll walk you through this and we'll do it together.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, it's a huge, and I always say like we're just going to do things in little clicks, right? Like we have this big, huge, vast problem, this huge, overwhelming concern that like I can't think about when I wake up in the middle of the night because I will never sleep again, And so we take these huge, massive, massive concerns, and we just think about them in little clicks. Okay, so the first click is this, the second click is this, and we're just going to take them, one little click at time. And so, at a certain point, like when the child is 18, approaching 18, you're thinking about, like, do they need a substitute decision maker or some kind of protective proceeding put into place because they can't, they shouldn't be giving informed consent for medical procedures. So what does that look like? What does that look
Mm.
like when they turn 18? And as they get just past 18, what does transition planning look like as they get out of high school and they're graduating out of the school? What does their world look like in the community? Will they be able to be substantially gainfully employed, or will they need some assistance with that employment? Who, and then kind of who, and then, and you just kind of take it age
Yeah.
by age by age, and not so much like the long. And at each stage, what you're doing is you're building the foundation that all of these things that are put into place can then go back and rely on and look at. So your house of cards of public benefits and stuff
Yeah.
is built on this like solid foundation of like, we thought about it mindfully at the time, proactively, as you say, and I love that. I use that word all the time too. We proactively looked at it. We start to build it slowly and intentionally. And then before we know it, we have this plan that like, and we stay open and honest about it, and we're not afraid to talk about it. That's another thing that I say quite often is like, we all die, right? Like no one gets out alive. Like, so have these conversations, find out where everybody
Mm.
stands on this, like when we were doing our own planning with, for our four kids, and I said to each of them, like, not my youngest who has the special needs, said, I don't want you guys to feel like, and I don't want you guys to feel like you have to take responsibility for him, but I also don't want you to feel like I have excluded you from that decision making.
Yeah.
And so, whatever your decision is or your thought process is right now, in this moment of time, as Dad and I are doing our documents, like you tell me what your thought process is, and that can change, but I always want you to feel like you can talk about this, and that if you say, no, I don't want, to be part of this decision making, I want to stay a sibling, I don't want to have to be able to do those things, or I'm going to be too busy off with my family, like I don't want to have to be, worried about these things. That I totally respect that, and I help families try to understand that what family has to say is really important, because their life as a sibling or as a family member of that special needs individual, whether it's mental health or cognitive impairments, has been ruled in a lot of ways by the stability or
Yeah.
the health of that individual.
We miss that boat a lot
Yeah,
in when we're talking about we're the care of a family, the care of an individual with special
yeah,
needs, and care of a family with mental illness. One of the things that we really miss, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I don't think I would have thought to, is the impact that that care and that special need, that those
yep,
outbursts in some situations, the attention that is required takes away from the other kids. So how are
totally.
siblings, and what's the trauma that the siblings are going through being raised in a home, and then yeah, are they feeling forced to be, um are they getting parentified without wanting to be?
Yeah,
And they have
absolutely.
boundary issues. You know,
Yeah,
it's bad
yeah,
enough that a mom and dad have to struggle with boundary issues to say, boy, and I see this all the time. Boy, I really don't want to be in a position where I've got to be a decision maker for my adult son. I
right.
just want to be his mom or dad. And
Yep.
they're not wrong. Some people are all about it. Some people say that's great, I can do it. And some people are just like, no, it's a boundary thing that I have to feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And
I
there's a
also think
lot here.
Yeah, and I also think too, in that context of like in the mental health issue too, more I think in the mental health arena more than the cognitive impairment. And I think it's important to draw the distinction between the two because they are two very
Sure.
different pillars of issues. And I think in the mental health space too, I have seen, at least in my experience, that like sometimes it's not great for the parent to be the decision maker of the adult child because it triggers a ton of stuff. Okay.
All right. So getting back to it, so yeah, I think that your point is very well taken. That there's definitely a difference between the cognitive side of the cognitive impairments versus mental health impairments,
Yeah.
and the way that kids and families, from what you see, cling to or rally around a person with the cognitive impairment is much different than the way that a family rallies around or doesn't rally
Right.
around a person with mental health.
Yeah.
I think that there's a definite distinction to be drawn there, and to what extent family members are willing to get involved and stay involved. And some of this goes to the individual with the impairment, one way or
Yep.
the other, and
Yeah.
what kind of person they are. Some of it goes to uh, I hate the word stigma, but I'll use it here. Just the stigma of, oh my God, I don't want to, I don't want to get involved with that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot there. There's a
I
lot that,
think I think the stigma is less, and maybe it's just because like my whole world is involved in this, so I don't necessarily even see that as a stigma. I think that the concern is that like, what is best for the individual, because sometimes like, I know I could imagine like if I was a decision maker for one of my adult kids, like I would trigger them all day long, like with my decisions. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, so I
yeah,
think that sometimes even a parent, isn't a great choice for that decision maker for that adult child because there's so many. You cannot not see, like you cannot bring your own set of filters and lived experiences and you know past story with that child, that adult child. You cannot not see that child through that lens,
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
you can't get rid of. So all those
Yeah.
traumatic things that I put you through when we were in high school, you are taking them out on your poor kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm taking it out on you because like as I see you now, I am like, I'm all triggered up. No. Um
I had that effect on a lot of people back then.
no,
So two things here. My work has been, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, has really been focusing on trying to reach families. That's why I
yeah,
chose this medium to try to reach more families, because I find myself very frustrated in that I'm putting together a lot of tools, educational and otherwise, and resources for people to
yeah,
use. And um and I know that they're out there, and they ask me and they tell me all the time what they're looking for, et cetera. And I try to create these things for them. And sometimes I get so angry and frustrated because people just aren't taking the stuff from me. And I
yeah,
asked a woman who's in a very similar situation as you. She's also in our profession. She's not a lawyer, but she's involved with actually special needs and things along these lines. So you probably do know her. I won't mention her name. She has a special needs son as well. And she said to me over lunch one day, she said, Mike, I think that one of the issues may be that when I have a down moment, I don't want
mhm,
to think about special needs. I don't want to think about getting more educated.
yeah,
I want to have a glass of wine and watch some tearjerker on TV and shut
yeah,
things out.
yeah.
Do you find that to be true for yourself,
Oh,
for your clients?
for sure. Oh, absolutely. That like and there's actually like a term for it. It's like I forget what it is, but there's a term for what we go through in that, and it's like high functioning anxiety or something. It's like there's some terminology for like why. I would be interested to talk to that woman to see like when she pulls into a parking lot, like before going to her office, does she sit quietly for 10 minutes and just like doom scroll through TikTok? Like there are these things that are like these protection mechanisms that we have to do to kind of like reboot our brains, because like it is such an intensity, and you don't know, especially in mental health, like it can be so unpredictable. you know
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in a way the intellectual disability is almost an easier way a world to navigate, because it's a pretty stable stable disability or stable need, right? Like the intellectual
Yeah, it's
disability,
consistent. It's consistent,
it's
at least.
consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah.
kind of is here, what the limitation, what the,
Right.
where the certain deficits are, and you can kind of make, small gains and things. But in the world of mental health, like, it comes at you and it's very unpredictable, and
Yeah.
it can come out of nowhere and you can have this
And
long
it can
period of
look like
stability.
many different things.
Right, right.
But
That is like, can be super like exhausting, and just in a way that just zaps you of everything, because you're so like on high alert all the time. You're so alert to like, just when's it going to happen, what's going to happen, and the minute your body kind of lets down, it happens, and you're like, oh, you're like, you're
you're
like,
always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a really, really, really difficult, it's it's abuse in a way, but it's, abuse but in a different, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
context than like,
It's
the way we think of it.
to a degree it's self-imposed abuse as well,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
degree that you let it be. But that's another story for another day, because I do want to get into a conversation with you someday in the very near future about caregiver burnout and what that
Oh,
looks
yeah,
like
yeah.
too.
Huge, huge,
Because
huge topic. Yeah, huge
yeah,
topic, and so
yeah,
important,
so
so
important
relevant.
for this discussion in this audience. But last thing in this sort of pre-planning mode, and folks, as lawyers, one of the jobs that we have is to try to make you think of the things that you otherwise wouldn't,
Right.
these what ifs that can come down the road later that you hadn't thought of.
Yeah,
Our expertise comes in by being able to foresee problems. Um,
yeah.
and naturally, I think we can't, I hope you understand, folks, we can't foresee all the potential problems that are down the road.
Right.
Rebecca in her work is a lot better at it than, let's say, I am in the work that I do. But as the job of a lawyer is to help you folks to start to contemplate some of these things, but not to the point where it is oppressive and pervasive, and
Right. I think that's an important
you
point.
perseverate about it. But I think one of the things that we should think about in this pre-planning discussion here is, we talked a little bit about the family values, the family ethics, but one of the things that you also want to help people plan for, I would hope, is how their loved one will continue to enjoy life,
Yep.
enjoy community involvement. It just goes beyond medications, and it goes beyond housing and where they're going
Yep.
to live. But how do you take that into consideration?
Well, I think it's a combination of things too, because and I had one case like years ago, that was such a fascinating, like really kind of reset my thinking in a way. It was a family where, and she was cognitively impaired, the child, and there was three other siblings outside of the cognitively impaired individual, and the dad had died a long time ago, and the three older siblings had moved out and had kids and were living on their own, and this special needs child, who was like in her 60s at this point, was living alone with mom, and then mom had him and was not connected to any services, didn't have Medicaid, and like was not connected to anything, and mom had a stroke and went into a nursing home, and all of a sudden it became this like crisis, because she couldn't the child could not live alone, couldn't live in the house. So this child was now like, didn't know, like her whole world went up in arms, because the system that she had had in place with mom, they were like mutual caregivers at that point. Mom goes into a nursing home after a massive stroke, so is not even able to give any instructions to anybody. The other siblings have kind of are out in the world living life and raising their own kids and stuff. And so all of a sudden we have this crisis planning now to do for this individual. And it was like chaos for everybody. It was chaos, like, and it wasn't even my family, but it was chaos for me, because I was like, what do we do? What do you do? And what was interesting, so fascinating, is once we got her settled into, she actually ended up going into a group home type environment. And lo and behold, and she started going to this day program, she's a brilliant artist.
she's able to do so many
She was
things.
like, who knew? And
Yeah.
she now like is the face of like this agency and does all this beautiful artwork and
Yeah.
all of these things and is living this like totally different trajectory. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I always put that in my head, especially when a family says to me, we're just going to keep him home like as long as we can, like always have a
Yeah.
place with him. And I'm like, that's not always the best solution. And
Yeah,
believe
is
me,
that a disservice? I
yeah,
think I told you about this. The very first case I was ever appointed as conservator on was this beautiful elderly couple who died very close to each other, and they had an adult woman that they had raised. She was 60. She was in her 60s.
yeah,
She was a complete quadriplegic uh, and completely developmentally disabled, and just wheelchair. She had complete need, complete,
yeah,
and they took care of every single need for her. And they died in their 80s. She was in her
yep.
60s, and they had made no preparations for
No
her
preparations.
whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you say, she was everybody's favorite. And
Yeah.
she's passed away now. Her name was Carolyn. She was just a beautiful human being trapped in this
Yep.
body that was just
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So you see it, and you hear these stories of, and what you just said just gave me goosebumps, because it's like you have this symbiotic relationship of people that they're codependent, right?
Right. Exactly.
Mom is almost as much dependent on daughter as daughter is on mom, and
100,
it,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it does happen. It
So
does happen.
yeah, so that's like part of the plan. That's part of the planning. Those are the little clicks that we're talking about, because we're saying like, hey, like, some of what you have preformed in your head is in terms of what's going to happen. Like, let's look at it from a different perspective and say, like, is that maybe not what is the best interest for everybody? And I think this is where I get a little bit of credibility when I can say, like, trust me when I say, like, it makes me sick to my stomach about moving my son out of the house and into, like, an apartment or something. Like I am not saying like, oh, just go and do this and it's great, like get over it, because like I know, like it makes me nauseous thinking about him in the world. um
Yeah.
and so I think it's those, it is those little baby steps of thinking, okay, this is what needs to be done, and thinking not that we're going to micromanage all of those what ifs, but we're going to set a course so that it can ebb and flow based on, and we're not going to compromise that fundamental structure, which is like, okay, if we get you connected with the right services now, those services can change, but you still are eligible. Like, all of those services are still going to be there, even if you have to swap them out at some point.
Such a valuable thing to say. And I'm going to quote our guy who's near and dear to both our hearts, is Jack Keys.
Yeah.
He and his father were collectively the probate judges in the city of New Haven, probably for 100 years.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
close to it. It's got to be
Yep.
close to it.
Yep.
And Jack always, one of the things he always said was, nothing we do here is permanent. Nothing
Yep.
here has to be permanent. So that's an important lesson right there in and of itself.
Yep.
We have to move on to some of the nitty gritty about planning that I want you to explain to folks, and frankly explain to me. Okay,
So
so
the
talk about
so
special needs trust.
Right. So that infrastructure, that house of cards that we've created, because we've seen why it's important to create that house of cards of benefits and access to services, and why that's important, and why we don't want a windfall of money coming in from an inheritance or, from whatever, that will wipe out that house of cards. And so how we protect against that is we proactively plan and we put into place a special needs trust that says the primary purpose of this trust is to supplement and not reduce or replace those public assistance benefits, not reduce or replace that house of cards. So
Right.
that trust is going to kind of fill in the edges of what it is. So like, so for example, we have our siblings, right? We have a sibling that lives in Texas, and our special needs beneficiary lives in Connecticut. And that sibling has always loved the sibling in Texas. And so that trust can then pay for the sibling to go to Texas to visit with with that sibling,
Yeah.
or pay for that Texas sibling to come and visit in Connecticut. It's intended, or there's a treatment that is not covered by Medicaid that would be great if they could access it, because it may be a little experimental, but it's proven to be really great. And so we can use that trust to supplement and not wipe out those benefits.
So that language is very important, that
Right.
the principle of this trust is to be used to supplement the public benefits and public income that my loved one is eligible for.
Right. Right.
Not to replace it.
Right.
And that's number one. Number two, it's important that the document contain clauses that indicate that the individual themselves does not have ready access to the money
Right.
anytime they want it. And we call that discretionary versus
Yep.
indiscretionary, right?
Right. So what you do, the way you accomplish that is so trusts generally, and just to give two lines on trusts. So a trust is just an agreement. Everybody has this idea that these trusts are like trusts are like this, obscure concept and stuff. And it's not. It's just like a contract. It's just an agreement. It's agreement between the person who creates it and the person who's going to administer it. It's between two parties. And so the person
By
who
the way,
creates it.
let me stop you, because that has nothing to do with the person who's getting the money.
No. Right. You're administering it for this
Yeah.
beneficiary. The beneficiary is a special needs individual. So let's use my estate plan. So, we have 4 kids. 3 of the kids' shares of our estate go outright to them, right? They get it when the second of us dies, they get their share outright. G's share goes into a special needs trust for his benefit. It's a trust that Mark and I have created for G's benefit, and we are the initial trustees because it's not going to get any money until the second of us dies. And then Matthew, our oldest son, when we had that discussion, he said he wanted to be part of that, which was great. He's in law school. He actually did his side note, his law review, was on housing for folks with mental illness. So we should talk about that another day.
We should talk to him for sure.
Yeah. And so he, as trustee, the special needs trust has language that says distributions to or on behalf of G are made in the sole discretion of the trustee, meaning that's the discretionary standard. So all trusts have a distribution standard. Sometimes you'll hear health, education, maintenance, and support, or whatever.
That's the typical language.
Right. The most important, and there's tax reasons why that happens that way, but a purely discretionary trust where the trustee has the sole discretion, that means that the beneficiary cannot go back and compel a distribution for health, education, maintenance, and support from the trustee. The trustee has the sole discretion on how to distribute it.
Because if they do have that ability, it blows it out of the water and they're not eligible for the Medicaid and the other public benefits that they otherwise would get.
It's considered an available asset for eligibility purposes.
But that's the crux of it, folks, for anybody who's listening and trying to understand. You're setting up an agreement so that this guy is going to take care, Mark is going to take care of G's money.
Yep.
G doesn't have any way to force Mark to do anything with the money. G can make requests of Mark, but Mark could say no. Or okay, here you go. That's a good use of this money that mom and dad intended for it. Because Mark has that money in his grasp, G does not have access to it. It is not considered an asset to G. So G is still eligible under, well, in this case, Medicaid.
Yep, exactly. And SSI. And SSI.
And that's the thrust of how we put together special needs trust and why we put them together. And you really quickly brushed over this. You talked about your conversation with the other 3 kids, which is great. And I think you mentioned, I don't think this is the real word. There's a non-legal document that you could write. It's not binding, but let's call it a letter of intent for.
Oh yeah, love letters of intent.
And I think that this should be used all the time by all of us, because legalese and legal he said she said screws up the best laid plans of mice and men all the time. So if you have a letter of intent, that can go a long way to help the future people understand what the heck you meant when you wrote this crazy weird sentence. So Beck, tell us what that is. What
Yeah.
is letter of intent and what does it do?
So a letter of intent is like, I call it like it's the letter of existential relief, because
What?
yeah,
Of course you call it that.
right. And so I have a template for it that I created like years and years ago. And what it does is it allows you to lay out like the information on your child, like who they are, like where they went to school, what anything that you think. And I use this template just as like to kind of get it flowing in terms of what what you think somebody else who's stepping in to when you're no longer there to help them get a sense of who this individual is, what they've been through, and like what you say that they value, and where like starting points are, like, never went to church, like hates gospel music, like, or, but loves country music, so
Yeah.
like you can put in as much of that stuff as you want. And it allows you to put in like, so my letter of intent is actually like, you're going to laugh. It's like a 10-page spreadsheet, and it has like,
10-page spreadsheet.
yeah, because we've had so many medical issues and surgeries and
Okay.
stuff over the year that like I have it all broken down, and who the providers are and stuff, and like his family story, and like, all these
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
so that when we go to the hospital or if somebody's meeting, like, and it has a link to a YouTube video, so you see his baseline, like, so that you know who he is. Because if he's laying there sick, you don't know whether he can talk. He just looks like a very disabled individual, and you don't know that he can talk and walk and,
Yeah, yeah.
and and
That he
sing,
likes
and
cars and trains and
right, and that he
yeah.
can sing songs and loves, take this job and shove it, and, as a song, and like all these inappropriate songs that he's been taught by his siblings, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and so you don't know that. And so this gives you a place to kind of like, and why I say existential is because it goes back to what's the first thing we said, is like, what happens when I die? Well, it gives you a place to put this stuff down, so you're like, okay, and it's constantly editable, right? It's
Well,
not
right. It's a
binding on.
living, breathing doc.
Yeah.
You know where this needs to be, Beck, and I know you took a look at this. This needs to be in this Care Navigator journal
Yep.
that we've been
Totally.
working on so hard and trying to get so many people to use because
Yeah.
it is so informative for people, not only in the time of crisis, but it's
Right.
informative of people in the future to say, look, let's take a look at this whole person.
Right.
Let's look at the
Totally.
totality of the circumstances, and the history is so vitally important. And
Yep. And where I also think that it's really helpful with mental health too is like, I also think like saying what drugs have been tried, like
yeah,
right there,
right.
like, here's all the meds that been tried, and like had a really bad, reaction to Depakote. So do
Right.
not use Depakote, like, at
Or
all costs.
how about just even a care plan? We
Yeah.
tried this
Right.
process in 1987
Right.
and
Right.
it didn't work. So don't try it again in 88, 89, and 90, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
But I
Bingo.
also thought that the letter of intent was meant to really clarify the legal document and what your intent was in terms of, for instance, very often in wills, right? A last will and testament will say, I had actually had this happen one time where a guy came in and said, "Listen, I have three kids. I'm leaving everything to one kid."
Mm.
And he wanted it specifically in there, and I would have done this anyway. You put in there that I have three siblings here, three children. Here's their names: one, two, and three, and I am specifically excluding one and two
Mm.
from blah blah blah. And so the intent is clear as to why, or the fact that you are intentionally,
Yep.
i.e., doing this, and here's why we're doing it this way.
Yeah, I mean that is a little bit different. I mean, that is definitely something you can do. You'll often see that like letters of intent, like to my trustee, like, to.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is something like, I would hope that you would use this. I would hope that my future trustee would use this to make sure that G gets to see his siblings no matter where they are, and they get to go on G always loved to go on cruises, and make sure that there's a family cruise that happens once a year, or something like, along those lines, like what the intention is to use the trust for, that you would hope that like what we provided for him was respected, down the road, if I'm not here to
Yeah.
make that decision, and to bolster what my kids may ask for. Like if my other kids are like, no, we always went on cruises, like, come on, trustee, like, let us use this for a cruise. You can
Right.
rely on that letter of intent.
What do you think about families who are not necessarily wealthy? What are some creative ways? I don't even, the second to die life insurance, you've mentioned it a
Yeah.
few times. Can they fund a trust that way?
Yeah, second to die life insurance trusts are second to die life insurance is a great way of funding an individual.
So that's something that folks can look into. So I want to make sure that they, we've got these things.
Yeah.
Special needs
And
trust we talked about, able accounts we talked about, this second to die life insurance policy for
And
the.
you know why you use second to die? Because they're cheaper. They're cheaper policies because they're on two lives. So they're cheaper because you have to have two deaths before they pay out as opposed to one death. So they're
Oh, okay.
usually much cheaper than now. Insurance after a certain point becomes cost prohibitive, regardless of
Absolutely.
whether it's
No
second death
question.
or not. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
But if the parents are young enough, it's definitely something to look into. And the other thing, just a planning tool, a lot of times families' wealth is like mostly in retirement accounts. And so one planning tool, because I don't know if you know, like the Secure Act, they changed the Secure Act changed the way retirement benefits pay out. It used to get inherited retirement benefits used to get a stretch over the lifetime of the beneficiary. And now the Secure Act made it so that it gets paid out over 10 years. Well, that's a big tax impact, because if you have to take, say you have a $500,000 policy, $500,000 retirement account, and it has to get paid out over 10 years, that's $50,000 of income that you have to take each year.
Yeah.
What happens with a special needs beneficiary, the one caveat to that Secure Act was it said that a special needs beneficiary, an eligible designated beneficiary who's a disabled child, gets that stretch still. They're the only person that gets that stretch. So sometimes it makes sense to the
Yeah.
the retirement account. You're like maximizing funds because you're getting a better stretch, a better
Better
payout.
bang for the buck as opposed to giving it to the kids who don't
Right.
necessarily quote
Right.
unquote need it.
So yeah, so you may like say, okay, well, we have a house and we have a retirement benefit. Well, give the house to the other kids, and give the retirement benefit to the beneficiary, or equalize that way.
That's interesting. In fact, I know a family whose mom did that, and I always wondered why the hell she did that.
Yep, I'm
That's
sure
got to
that's
be
why.
exactly why.
Yep.
Huh. Interesting. One last bit on the family involvement and family as
Yeah.
trustee and the kids as trustee. I want to get your take on this because I know how I feel about it. Um, Sometimes bringing in a professional fiduciary is just a necessary evil. Somebody who's
Yeah.
out there who is, doesn't have a dog in the fight, and because of boundary issues and everything else that we discussed,
Yep.
you want to bring in an independent third party. I've done that a
Yep.
lot for people. I still do.
Yep.
So there is that. But many, many, many times family steps up and says, no, of course I will do this. I want to do this. My recommendation on this is that we speak this loud and clear to everybody involved, and you could totally disagree with me.
Okay.
In fact, I almost hope you would because we can have a good debate about it. But I really encourage people that if you're involved with this, and you're going to do this work for your loved one, take a fee.
Yeah.
Take a fee to do it. Don't say, I'm going to do this out of the goodness of my heart, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Don't get yourself into that boat. Don't put your siblings in that boat. Don't put your
Yep.
parent, your deceased parents or your living loved one in that position. Take a fee because I say all the time, resentment, once that seed of
Oof.
resentment is planted, it
Yep.
is impossible to kill off. And
Oh,
nothing,
so
this
just gets
this work
bigger.
is so hard to do. And if
Ugh.
you're doing it right, this is a thankless, thankless job. This is not a money-making scheme.
Nope.
Take a fee. It could be 1%, it could be a flat fee, whatever you want, but make sure it makes you comfortable that when
Yeah.
you take the fee, you're getting reimbursed for the work you're putting in.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I do. In fact, I have a situation where like my elderly neighbors had a special needs child, and like I'm a co-trustee with one of the children, one of the other grown children, and she does like all of this work, like she does
Yeah.
all of these things, like all of the stuff. And I always say to her, like come up with a figure like that
Yeah.
that is fair to you, and like I will sign off on it, like because
I give
and
that advice all the time.
and here's
I
the
just gave that advice to a family member within the last 3 weeks. Seriously.
And here's the math on that. Here's how you say that. You say, if you didn't do it, you would be hiring somebody else to do it.
Well,
So if you're
and
going
in
to
this
pay someone,
situation with your neighbor, I assume you're taking a fee. I'm not.
yeah, I mean, I take a very minimal fee because
Right.
like she does all the work. Like I basically sign
Exactly.
off on the tax returns, like, and so, and answer questions as they pop up that she may have about like benefits and things. And,
Yeah.
and so like it's de minimis. She does the big lift. And you know what? If giving her that fee facilitates her not having stress when she goes and speaks to her sister, or may
Yeah. Yeah.
facilitate her like going and taking her out on a Saturday for ice cream because she's not worried about like finishing up that last project to get some overtime. Well, like I think that's a win across the board. Like
Yeah. And
that's
so would her parents, by the way.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
guarantee, like parents, I would never have a problem if my child was taking a trustee fee. Like I would want you to. I would want you to. I'd want you to feel enriched, like across the
Yeah.
board, and that you were not sacrificing. Going back to what we were
Don't
saying before,
sacrifice. Don't get
yeah,
resentful. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Going
Agreed.
back to that
1,000%.
sacrifice and resentment that started when, we couldn't go to Disney because he couldn't get on the plane, like,
Yeah.
because he was freaking out, or
Yeah.
like, we were planning to go to Ice Capades and, he ended up having to go to the emergency room because his shunt failed. Like, like all of these things that like that you have had to learn how to be flexible, in response to circumstances that were far beyond your control.
Or
This is
understanding in some cases.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That this is a small way, and that you're still willing to take on this, like, is a
Yeah.
small way to like
Yeah.
to
God
to
bless you.
say,
And here you go.
yeah, to say
Yeah.
thank you. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I do not agree. And otherwise it's involuntary servitude. Like,
Well,
it's,
right. Yeah. And
yeah,
now I got to do it because my parents are dead. And
yeah.
if we don't, they're going to come and haunt me.
And that is a point that I try to impress upon families a lot, is just because they're a sibling does not mean that they are responsible. It does
Right.
not equate. It is not equal. It's not equal.
No.
And as soon as you do that, particularly in the mental health world, as soon as you do that, you have now shifted the hierarchy and you have now changed it to a business relationship. So any chance that they had at staying family and having like a normal sibling
Yeah.
relationship, you have just killed it
Right.
by now making that special needs, or that individual with mental health issues, now have to go ask for things, or have to feel like that
Yeah.
person is in
Yeah.
priority.
That boundary thing just
Ugh.
becomes so.
I feel like anybody who has like a level of knowledge that I can't have, or a different perspective on it, is somebody that should be at the table to make
Yeah.
those
And many
lifts.
people do have different perspectives than a parent, right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see my baby, my baby, my baby, my baby,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Right.
and everybody else is a threat to my baby,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
There's the
Stop,
mama
I got
bear.
it. I got him. I got him. I got him. I got him,
Right.
like,
Right.
and that's not legit. Like that's not
Yeah.
realistic,
All right. So now a bigger and harder question.
Uh-oh.
Well, maybe it's not that hard because I think you've already talked about it. If we're going to give, in addition to the Care Navigator journal that I think everybody should have, that I developed, and I
Yep.
hope you guys will all get, what would be your starting number if they're trying to hold it together? They're trying to kind of hold it together. Um, what would be the number one tool that you would tell them to start with?
Um, so it depends, like my lawyer answer, right? It
Yeah.
depends. It
No, God,
depends,
I hate that
Michael.
answer. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
depends. I think the holding it together, like that there's so many different things that you're holding together, obviously. Like that's why I love the imagery, because I'm like, yep, it's like a cup, and it's like so many things that is like taped together, and like you're doing your best. I mean, so I do think like the letter of intent is a nice way to start, because I do think it helps you kind of like offload some of that, and it feels like
Right.
you're actively doing something, much like I think your your
Sure.
tool
Yeah.
does.
I like the idea of the letter of intent from the way that you described it and how you envision it, because it does get you thinking about it. It
Yeah.
gets people in that mindset, which is half the battle.
Yep.
And I figured that that was going to have to, I had no idea what the answer would be. I didn't really have an answer for that
Yeah.
question when we started, but as we've been talking, I think it just makes a lot of sense to get introspective and thoughtful and planful and proactive about all of this. Back to that
Yeah.
word, which may have been the very first word we used in this whole conversation. So,
Yeah. Definitely proactive is better. And demystifying death. We all die and we never know when it's going to happen. And so like why run from it? We don't have to
mm,
live in this morbid,
yeah,
fascination that I might die when I go get in my car. But like, but living in this idea that like, I'm going to keep doing these little clicks. And as I do these clicks, I'm just building this better plan, and that can be tweaked, and I'm keeping it flexible and responsive enough to all the things. And the other thing I was going to say about that letter of intent is nice because it also allows you to put down phone numbers of people. So like, oh, who is that? Who is that guy at that
yeah, yeah,
guardian place that like,
yeah.
oh, mom
Or
always talks.
throw a picture in there. I
Yeah.
thought about this the other day. I can't remember the name of that doctor, but if you show me a picture, I was like, that's the one. Yeah,
Totally,
yeah,
totally. It
yeah,
allows you to just that's why I do the baseline image, so that you know what he looks like when he's up and well. So now
yeah.
you automatically, I don't have to describe it for you when we're in crisis and I'm watching you roll him down to get a CAT scan as he's vomiting because his shunt is failing. Like,
Mm,
you can click on your phone as we're rolling down and you can see what he looks like. Oh, okay, he's way beyond his baseline. Like, he's not
right.
only does he have an IQ of 54, but now you know how that IQ of 54 manifests, what he
Yeah,
looks like when
yeah,
he's well,
yeah.
and that's all like so relevant to the
Well,
next gen of people who are going to take care of him.
I mean, just as a final thought, and again, as always, thank you so much for your insight and the conversation. I love our conversations, but it's humanizing, right? It's putting a
Yeah,
human back into what a piece of paper or a
right.
person laying on a bed, and your insight and your expertise and your experience in all this is so valuable, and I hope so many people out there got a lot out of this. I learned. Thanks again, Beck.
My pleasure, Michael. I think it's
Okay.
great that you're doing, and I love your logo. So,
Well,
you need to now you need to get me a sweatshirt or something. Not a sweat.
yeah,
You
well,
need
we're
to
going
get
to
me like
get you
a.
the logo to go behind you because you're going to be involved in a lot more of these
Let's
podcasts.
do it. Let's do it. I'll do my logo instead of my Dave Pitney blanket.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
All right.
right. Okay, as we sign off today, I want to give you a couple of seconds here. Just take a deep breath and breathe it in and breathe it out. There's a lot to this stuff. We've covered a lot. We talked about trusts. We talked about taxes. We talked about the what ifs that usually make us want to, change the channel or go running like your hair is on fire. If your head's spinning, it's okay. That's actually a sign that you care deeply about the issues that we're talking about and the legacy that you want to build. So here's the truth. And this is true for so many of us and so many different things that we try to do. Perfection is the enemy of protected. You don't need to have a 100-page legal binder finalized by tomorrow morning to be doing a good job with this. Sometimes holding it together just means writing down that first line, that first list of names, the people that you trust, the doctors who know your routine or your loved one's routine, friends who understand the why behind the what. Planning isn't about predicting every single hurdle, even though we try to. It's about building a foundation so that when the hurdles come up, the person you love has a place to stand, and that house of cards that we talked about isn't collapsing down around them. You're going to do the hard work of love right now, even in the quiet, boring, administrative parts of caregiving. And yes, they are quiet and they are boring, and there's administrative work to be done. So, what's your homework for this week? Don't try to solve 30 years in 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. Just have one conversation. Call up a professional. Text another parent that you know. Just sit down with a yellow legal pad and write down step 1 at the top. Start writing down people that you trust and that you know and love. You've got this. And even if you feel like you only kind of have it, you're still doing enough. I'm Michael Macniak, and I want to thank you for joining me on Holding It Together, Kinda. And we'll talk again soon.